Hello and welcome to the Powerhouse Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Stephana Johnson, and I have a special guest with me today. This is Donn Levie Jr. He has worked with leaders around the globe, and his leadership style is of the variety that we're going to get to know because Donn is such a unique individual. He has this experience that is blended with creativity, with artistic ability. He's a professional classical musician, and he's a connoisseur of wine. So he's got these beautiful pieces of this artistic, eclectic lifestyle coupled with this strength of character and this presence that really captivates one. So I've been lucky enough to be in an audience of leaders where we were listening to Donn, and as he speaks, he holds a presence that is so calm yet clear that you feel that influence right away. And I think that that's something that's essential for powerhouse leaders. So I'm excited to have Donn here and have him share more about his skills, what he brings to the world of leadership, and how we can all benefit from that. So welcome, Donn.
Thanks, Stephana. Good to see you again.
It's great to see you. So let's get right to it. I love to start off with either your favorite quote or a mantra that you use. And oftentimes people will ask me, do you mean professionally or personally? And to me, they're interchangeable. To me, that's really key. So I would love if you do have them separate, personal and professional, that's fine too. But as a leader, you're leading yourself as well. Your example as a leader always starts with yourself. So I love the personal aspects. If you're willing to be open in that arena as well, I'd love for you to share in that way.
Well, it's funny. Over the years, I've had so many different quotes taped to my wall or taped to my office when I was working in corporate. But I'll tell you the one that characterizes the start of my day that I had in my last office when I was working for an employer. It was a quote by Johann Sebastian Bach. And it said, "Bring me a bowl of coffee before I turn into a goat." And I'm a coffee guy.
Okay.
I love different types of coffee and a French roast. If they could French roast my French roast, I like that bold coffee. I would be so happy. But one of the quotes I have in my office here at home was one my wife actually made up. And we were talking about, how momentum is a mind game. There's no such thing statistically as momentum because you hear about it in sports when someone has the hot hand who keeps shooting three-pointers one after the other. Steph Curry for the Warriors might be a little different case. But for most athletes, there's no such thing as momentum because each shot has a 50-50 chance of being missed. Every opportunity, every shot has a 50-50 chance of being missed. But we were joking about momentum, and as my business was picking up, she turned to me, she said, the better it gets, the better it gets. In other words, when you're focused, when your energies are focused and you're doing all the right things you need to do, the better it gets, the better it gets. All those things start playing together and channeling your energy toward your goals and objectives.
Yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. And interesting that you're talking about, so the better it gets, the better it gets. What are the things that are essential in order to get to that better and then keep repeating? So you brought two things into there, and I want to go back to this momentum piece as well, because you said there's no such thing as momentum. It's because you have that opportunity. And anybody is really faced with the juxtaposition of, should I go here or should I go here? Should I stay mediocre? Should I excel? Or taking that shot. So talk to us about that.
The whole idea of momentum is each decision that you make to move your career or your business or your life forward is a juxtaposition of continuing or not continuing. And momentum is doing the right thing at the right time for the right reasons to move whatever your goal is forward. And that takes discipline to do that because it may mean, like for me, on Saturday afternoon working on updating an upcoming presentation when I want to watch my Red Sox baseball game. Watching Red Sox, especially this time of year, will not make me happy since they're not playing well. But I'll also feel bad because I know I should have been working on my presentation to tweak it for the next speaking opportunity.
Yeah, so it does come back down to, for lack of a better word, the mundane. Doing those
Yes.
things that maybe don't feel great to do, but we know we need to get them done to move us forward.
Exactly. And Brian Tracy wrote a book called Eat the Green Frogs, or I have it in my bookcase here. Yeah,
I know what you're saying.
Eat that green frog.
Yeah.
And that came from a Mark Twain saying, where Mark Twain said, if you do the worst thing first thing in the morning, the thing you hate the most, do it first thing in the morning, the rest of the day is a breeze. And for me, first thing in the morning is doing those things I don't like to do, which is a lot of times it's outreach. I'm trying to catch people early in the morning when they get to the office. Whether it's sometimes they're not in a good mood to talk or they just don't want to talk at that time. But for me, that's the hard thing. I'm of that creative mindset where I want to get in, start writing. I want to start tweaking keynotes. I want to start tweaking my corporate program on influential and persuasive intelligence. So I have to do those things I don't want to do first so I can get them off my desk and get them off my to-do list.
And do you differentiate those things that you don't like to do and the main things you need to get done? Because you really need to do both of them, but do you know what I'm saying with regards to, okay.
Yeah, I do. And I know that our coach, David Newman, says, you got to focus on the money-making activities. And a lot of times, as a creative person, I get distracted by working on non-money-making activities because it's what I like to do. It's what I want to do. And I punish myself for that. But I think everybody goes through that phase where the hard stuff is oftentimes at the bottom of the to-do list. And it really needs to be at the top. I don't do it every day. I don't put my green frog. I don't have it for breakfast every day, but I try to do it more days out of the week than not.
Yeah, good advice. So early on, if we're looking over, you've had a 30-year span of a career leading in different variety of different venues that you've been working in. You've worked in corporate, you've worked with corporate companies, in fact, Intel Corporation, Motorola, Philips, companies like this, federal government you've worked for. In fact, you're in academia. So you've had the gamut of not only being in leadership roles, but being influenced by a variety of different leaders. And if you look back over that from this bird's eye view that you now have, what are some of the crucial early mistakes you made? And what did you do to course correct?
Wow, let's see. I can tell you from my experience, and this might be one of those topics that you didn't expect would come up in this question. But back in 1986, I was working in the oil and gas exploration industry for Phillips Petroleum. And then I went to work for a small company, an independent company. Right after I joined this small independent company, the price of oil went to less than $10 a barrel. And this was a worldwide problem. I could not just pick up routes from Houston and move to, say, Denver or LA and get a job with another oil company. They were laying off everybody and shutting down operations. I had a lot of rental property that I owned in Houston at the time, and the people who were my tenants were in the oil business. So they got laid off, which meant I had real estate with no one living in it, and I still had to make payments. I was out of work for a year, and a year later I got a job with a company that was a software development company that created pipeline software for oil companies. So I got to use a little bit of my geology and geophysics knowledge in that position, but it only paid about 40% of what I was making in the oil business. So I still had property that was just sucking all the cash out of my accounts. And I got that job was only 8 months, and then they shut down. I ended up selling the properties at a loss or turning them back to the bank. Even my own home, I lost to foreclosure. And that was in 1988. Then I got a position here in Austin, and I thought, you know what I have to do as I'm traveling on Interstate 10 going west out of Houston. I have to focus on the road in front of me, literally and figuratively. I can't keep looking in the rearview mirror, because I thought I was going to be in the oil business all my life. And that's one of the things when opportunities present themselves to you, you can't, especially if they're forced upon you like they were for me, you have to focus on the road ahead and the opportunities that lie ahead rather than regretting what happened to you in the past because you can't do anything about it. And from there, I stayed in high tech. I migrated from the oil and gas industry into software development, into microprocessor design support, and the environment here in Austin has been very, very rewarding for both my wife and myself.
That is thank you for sharing that. Very personal and gives us a really clear perspective. What I also noticed is whether you went through that process, you didn't add any extra drama to, or make this mean that it was foreclosed, or we lost this or we lost that. And just the little bit that I know of you personally, you don't add the drama to all of the things that happen. And they're going, every life happens and things are happening. So
Exactly.
when we add the extra drama, the meaning, those are like having distractions on your road, that pull you off. And I really love that picture that you painted of, you've got to have that straight, you look at the road in front of you, and that is important.
Well, I knew that when I was out of work for a year before I found the other software job in Houston, there were two ways to look at the arrival of the mailman every day. And I sent out 500-600 resumes and only got a handful of replies and hardly any interviews. You can either dread the arrival of the mailman and say, God, this has been day 265 where I haven't gotten any responses. Or you can say, I'm a day closer to getting a job offer because there's nothing here today. That doesn't mean there won't be one tomorrow or the next day or the next day. And at some point I had to switch my thinking and shift the thinking into that I'm getting closer to the next position. And that mind shift, that vision shift really helped out. And when I left Houston for Austin, I left with $2,500 in my pocket. My parents loaned me. That's all I had. Yeah.
So what did you use for that mindset shift? Was it something outside of you, or did something internally shift?
I think it was a combination of both. My fiance, who's now my wife, we were engaged at the time. She was my rock. And she never wavered in her commitment to me and her love for me. And she's a real positive motivator. But then that was the external. And then the internal was that I have a choice to make. I can wallow in despair, or I can choose to see what lays in front of me. What opportunities can I now capitalize on with my skills and knowledge and expertise? And that's the shift I took.
Excellent. This leads to how your specialization then came about. Is that correct?
It did. I realized when I was working in the oil and gas business, of course, I had hiring manager responsibilities as I worked my way up, managing people and projects for these companies. And I realized that there were so many qualified people who simply did not know how to convey their expertise in hiring situations. They would walk into an interview room with fear on their face, and their body language was giving off feelings of anxiety. And hiring managers and decision makers spot that right away. They start marking that scorecard with that visual first impression. And I said, what can I do? So I need to help these people out. I wrote an article that was in a professional journal back in, I think it was 88, 89. Oh, sorry, it was later than that. Might have been later than that. But the article was so popular, people started asking me to come in and do workshops. And then I did the workshops, and then they said, can you speak at our annual conference or a national conference and do a keynote or do a half-day seminar or full-day seminar? I said, sure, I'd be happy to do that. And then it eventually turned into one of two books on professional development strategies and tactics using influence and persuasion techniques.
Yeah, so it sounds like your career, where you are now as a professional speaker and as a professional consultant for companies, happened organically. It wasn't like you had some agenda. It happened naturally because that's what you were interested in. You saw a need, you saw, and you wanted to help.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Now, I've always wanted to be a teacher since I was in elementary school, and I got to the point where when I was working on my bachelor's degree in geology geophysics, I was actually considering a teaching certificate to go along with it. But when I did student teaching at a 9th grade class, and it was a discipline class, and I thought, I don't want to do this day in and day out. So I didn't pursue the teaching certificate. But as I worked on my master's degree, I got the opportunity to be an adjunct faculty lecturer with the University of Houston, where I taught fundamentals of petroleum exploration and production. And I loved it. That was the environment I loved, is in a teaching and conveying, not so much conveying knowledge, but helping students acquire the knowledge and understanding and the problem-solving ability that they were going to face in the real world when they get out of school.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you transitioned with the teaching and the leading, and I know there's some concepts around teaching that you're basically feeding information or giving them a bunch of facts. And I know about you, your teaching style is also, from my viewpoint, a higher level than feeding people a bunch of facts. I love the way you tell the stories, the way you bring in and invite not only collaboration, but the way of, I forgot the word, but the continue allowing for the person who's listening, whether it's a leader, whether it's whomever is in your audience, to actually look at it for themselves from a perspective so they can internalize it a little bit and work through it, as opposed to just being fed more information and that. The times that I've worked with you, you've really allowed for me to, well, take a look at it from this perspective. What is that? How does that look? And I think I've seen that for you, not only with your teaching and your writing, but the way you do speak. And so talk a little bit more about advice you would give to others who want to have that influence and impact, but in a way that actually does get implemented, right?
Yeah, exactly. And when I speak at conferences, and I tell my audience, I said, look, you have a choice here. I can speak to you as a lecturer at this conference, or I can speak to you as your personal coach. And if you choose personal coach, you better fasten your seatbelt. And they all start laughing. And I said, because that'll be, and when they finish laughing, I say, that'll be the last laughter you hear in this room for the next 2.5 hours. And then I'm joking, of course, because I interject a lot of humor. And but the thing I would focus on, especially for young leaders who may be in a management position and looking to get into a higher positions of responsibility and authority and accountability, stay away from, this is going to sound revolutionary, stay away from books with the word leadership in the title. Leadership is part innate qualities that you have and part acquired external. It's a combination of working the two together. And same thing with going to seminars. The best approach to leadership I can think of is every situation is different. There's situational leadership. There's management by objectives. There's relationship management and leadership. And all of those come into play depending on the situation. They're all situation dependent. But the underlying foundation through all those leadership styles is having the presence-driven leaders understand that people above them are watching them, people below them are watching them, and it's their job to edify the objectives of the company and the people above them, and also bring up the people that are underneath them. And I try to describe presence as trying to describe presence is like trying to describe a summer breeze. You cannot describe a summer breeze. All you can do is describe the effect it has on other things. The clothes hanging on the clothesline, the leaves rustling in the trees, the papers blowing down the street. And that's what presence is. It's a feeling. It's a feeling you get by watching how someone seamlessly moves through a situation or moves through people or moves through a room. It's almost like a silent wake that they put out that attracts people to them. And that's one of the things that I would try to emphasize with people who are leaders. I'll take a look at people like Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton, JFK. They had leadership presence. It was part personality, part innate, part acquired capabilities. And then you look at guys like Richard Nixon and Mitt Romney. The only people that they could attract were their immediate family members and close friends. They didn't have that presence that drew in others outside of their inner circle. But I would focus on presence.
Yeah, that's interesting. I want to stay on this for a little bit.
Sure.
So the first thing when you were drawing this idea of that, don't read any book that has leadership in it. Essentially, don't put yourself in a box as a leader and say, okay, I'm this kind of a leader. This is how I'm going to lead, and how you look at, like having a hammer and that, and so everything's a nail. You're just looking at all of that from this one perspective. And you're saying to open up and to be like bamboo, be like water, be like the breeze, where you are stable, meaning you have your sense of presence, but you are also present to what's happening, listening, observing, using this, and those are characteristics of incredible. I mean, we know Kennedy had charm and charismatic, that energy of the charismatic. The same with Clinton and Ronald Reagan. There was that essence, because it wasn't so much like, look at me, I'm so interesting, like other leaders that we've seen out there that draw your attention away from what the mission is or what the intention is. It's almost as if they, the Kennedy and the Clinton and the Ronald Reagan had the idea of, I mean, look at even Elizabeth I. I want to put some women out there, Queen Elizabeth I, or as we look at them and seeing that their vision was bigger than them, than their persona. And that's so fascinating that you bring that up. Would you mind talking just a little bit more about this, especially for up and coming leaders? Because you said don't read any book that has leadership in the title. So what books should they be reading? What are your go-to books?
Well, let me capitalize on what you just said, that the most effective approaches to be how to be a leader and leadership development. I'm going to probably eat my words here, because a couple of the books I recommend have leadership in the title. But do as I say, not as I do. The most effective approaches for leadership, they show new leaders and experienced leaders how to be better stewards of people, not just as a company resource, but in all areas of their lives. Mm-hmm. You don't lead by authority. That's the worst thing you can do, is lead by authority. People have to believe in you. They have to trust you. They have to have some familiarity with you first to establish a relationship. And that's all tied. It's what I call engage mentality. It's a mentality of engaging other people and making them feel like the most interesting person in the room, that they're valued and they have something of value to say. Now, as far as books, I actually wrote my book list down here. Let's see if I can pull it up here. All right. Here's I have 4 titles that come to mind. How to Win Friends and Influence People. Dale Carnegie. I'm rereading that book. I've read that book 10 times since I first started reading it. I'm now reading it again. And something always comes to mind that jumps out because your mind's in a different spot to spot those jewels of wisdom. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. These are two great works that stand the test of time. In Search of Excellence by Tom Peters. I read that book in the 80s, and that really got my head around leadership from a bigger perspective. And then everyone says this is the leadership Bible. Warren Bennis, his On Becoming a Leader. And those are the four books that I used in the 80s and 90s as I was moving into different leadership positions. And because the workplace and the workforce have evolved a lot since these books came out, I've got a few more recent go-to books that have served me well, and I know they'll serve others as they advance in their career. The Social Animal is one, and the other one is called The Road to Character by David Brooks. Both outstanding pieces of advice for up-and-coming leaders and even contemporary leaders. I'm a big fan of Dr. Robert Cialdini. He wrote two groundbreaking books on influence. One was, in fact, titled Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion. And his second book is called Persuasion, not but P-R-E, suasion. It's a way to influence and persuade. And he talks about being able to set the environment and the conditions between two parties so that the other party is even more receptive to what you're going to propose to them as far as influence. And it's a really, really interesting book on how to do that. And I actually teach that approaches in questioning during interviews, when you're trying to interview a new client or trying to get a job. I actually have questions that pose a persuasive approach to putting you through the question you ask, putting you in the job before you're even hired. You get the hiring manager or the decision maker to answer the question, such as, when people go through a hiring process, a hiring manager will say, "Do you have any questions of us?" Well, they usually go, "No, I don't," but that's the wrong answer. Say, "I have a question. What is your most top priority project you have right now, and how do you see you and me working together on it?" Well, what you've done is you've planted a seed in that decision maker's mind of you already being hired and in the company working together. And once you start that, I call it a mind worm contagion. If you had a great interview and you've got a great resume, when it comes time to evaluate candidates, who are they going to remember first? The guy that I already had in mind, or the gal, working together.
That's brilliant.
And and typically the person who gets the job offer is the person people want to work with, not necessarily the most qualified person. So let me get back to my books. I forgot my books. I'm getting on a tangent here. I love
that's
talking
fantastic.
about this.
That was gold right there.
Good. Another one, I have to toss in Daniel Goleman's Emotional Intelligence as another paradigm-shifting book for up-and-coming leaders. And one more, Dr. Paul Homoly, Homoly. He wrote this outstanding book. And the funny thing is, Dr. Paul Homoly, he's a dentist. He was an oral surgeon. He had a degenerative eye disease, which prevented him from being able to do oral surgery. So what he did was he focused on how can I help other dentists build their practice. And he wrote this book called Just Because You're an Expert Doesn't Make You Interesting. Phenomenal book. And he's a certified speaking professional. He's a member of the National Speakers Association. And he now teaches other dentists how to be better speakers and presenters when they speak at conferences, or how to build their practice. And I want to say, for any leaders who want to transition to influencer or even thought leader status, especially as they're charged with leading, managing, mentoring, and influencing larger and larger audiences, Dr. Homoly's book is a must-have for their library.
Fantastic. I don't know some of those books, and I am excited to add those. I want to put in a caveat here, and that is that I personally know that you are an avid reader and stay on top of the leading edge stuff, so that you're referring back to Think and Grow Rich and How to Influence People, and even books that you said back in the 80s. This is crucial that we don't poo-poo books that are before 2018, right?
Right,
Because
right.
and I have some people in my industry that will say, "Oh no, if it's before 2000, if it's 2 years old or older, I won't read it."
Yeah.
And they are missing out on a tremendous, and even for children, like I'm having my children read Think and Grow Rich right now. I read it
Good,
when I was
good.
10, and
Yeah,
we'll read it over and over. So these are gold. I'm really excited, actually. Even Influence and Persuasion, it's a great book, and then Persuasion, I love this. That piece that you gave us is a golden nugget right there. I want everyone
good.
to remember, because it's not just, we can use that not just in with interview process, but with our teams, like getting our
Absolutely.
teams to actually see that end result and working together with collaboration. So I can see these pieces really intertwining together nicely to help us all lead and influence in a better way and get better results. Before I let you go here, thank you so much for your time. I really
Sure.
sincerely appreciate it. I want to just take a moment and acknowledge, and then maybe get any other last piece that you might want to share on this. And that's that you are so well rounded as a human being. You've mentioned your wife as well, that fiance, and you've had a long term, stable, healthy relationship with a very supportive and clearly strong individual as a partnership. I know you have a family, I know you have children. You are not just this single pointed leader. You are interested in life, and you get out there and participate. I know you're going to go see a play tonight. You're going to go experience the uh, well, you said Vivaldi, so what is that? A
Yeah, the
concert.
Austin Baroque Orchestra tomorrow
Right.
night.
So you enjoy the orchestra, you enjoy culture and life and experiences. And I think we can't underestimate the power of being a well-rounded, connected with life and participating in life and experiences of life, because that makes you that much better of not only a leader but a human being, right?
I
So,
totally agree, and it's funny because I play classical guitar. I have a flute partner, but we don't play for money. We play at assisted living centers. We play at nursing homes. We play at hospitals. We play at other churches around the Central Texas area. I play as a solo artist as well. And I teach classes at church, not on a frequent basis, but a couple times a year. Um, I enjoy giving back. And I think that's why it goes back to my fourth grade when I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to give back. I enjoy being around other people. And I think that's all part of my personality. I'm a classically trained musician, even though I played in rock bands. And I even played in a band that opened for Hendrix back in 1968. So I've done all that kind of stuff. I've done it all, but I love music. I love helping other people. That's my charge in life. If I can make someone's day a little brighter, a little happier, then my work for the day has been done.
and you balance it with such strength of character and conviction for what you do. Your actions definitely speak as loudly as your words. So, with
Thanks.
that, I am honored and so grateful that you took your time out on this Friday to share with us. Thank you so
Sure.
much. All
My
right. So,
pleasure.
yeah, is there any last minute, any closing thoughts that you'd like to share?
Well, if anyone, I have a lot of free material on my website. If people want to contact me, it's Donn Levie Jr. Strategies.com. It's DONNLEVIEJR Strategies.com. Uh, but I think the thing that helped me out, I actually learned more reading on my own the last 2 years of college than I
Mm.
did with the required reading in college. And I think the secret to grabbing opportunities as they come about. It's being well-rounded and having a variety of knowledge. You get that through books. You don't get it through watching TV. But bury yourself in a good book. And my wife reads a lot of fiction and a little bit of nonfiction. I read nonfiction and a little bit of fiction. So we kind of balance our collection down in the library a little bit. But be an avid reader. That'll open up the world for you.
Fantastic. Thank you so very much. And I'll make sure that those books are posted in the text down below, as well as a link to your website. Thank you so much,
Great.
Donn.
Thanks, Stephana. Good to see you, dear.
Okay, bye.
Take care.
You too.